The fragrance is exotic and peppers are cooked right into the bar. Today's video is Madagascar goat's milk and clay. If you're ready to switch your soap making up from the sweet aromas to the spicy, sultry fragrances, then I'm going to let you in on one of my little market secrets. I have a few versions of these Near Eastern desert fragrance oils, and the NG Madagascar spice type always sells out at the market. Now this is definitely a men's scent that seems exotic at first, but its dominating notes are clove and orange, which really is pretty Western and familiar. And I think that might be why people react so positively to the fragrance. It catches your attention definitely, and as soon as your customer's brain sorts out what it really is, then they kind of come back into their familiar comfort zone. Now if you like to experiment with your fragrance oils, then hit the thumbs up button. And in this video, I'm going to go into a few of my hot process making secrets for people who are a little bit more advanced in soap making. So if you want to see more of these tips, then make sure you subscribe to this channel. And just as always, the full recipe for this soap is available and ready to be printed at our website at thermalmermaid.com, along with all the other recipes we create. So check that out if you want to make this bar at home for yourself. As you can clearly see here, we don't need to take any time prepping our hard oils because everything goes into the crock pot. So the crock pot is turned on, we're going to let these oils melt, and the lye water solution is sitting in the refrigerator even though it is going into the crock pot because we're going to be adding these when the temperatures are close together. The oils will heat up faster than the lye water cools down, so we'll be combining them at higher than room temperature, but they still need to be close together so that they can emulsify properly. You'll need to have your thermometer handy throughout this project because we'll be measuring temperature all the way up until the end so that all of our ingredients incorporate properly. Many of the ingredients that we're adding in are temperature dependent in order for them to maintain their properties as they're incorporated into the bar. Now in this recipe, I'm using 3 pounds of oils in a 6-quart crock pot. And when you look at it, you might be thinking, oh, you have twice the amount of space in there. I could definitely turn that into a 5-pound batch of soap. And you could, just until it starts to cook and expand and overflow the top of your crock pot. Now we don't have any fancy designs or swirls, so as you add the lye water solution, give yourself plenty of time with the stick blender to blend this all in together and allow for it to emulsify and even come to a light trace. Once you've gotten it to where you want it, we'll put the lid on this and we'll let this cook for 30 minutes and come back and see what we've got. And you can clearly see after 30 minutes, we're heavily into the first stage of hot process soap cooking. The texture is very much like a custard, and you might see some of the oils and liquids begin to separate from each other. So we're going to mix this all back in together and we're going to give it plenty of time to cook some more. Now all we need to do is leave this alone and let it cook for another 30 minutes. And when we come back, you can see that we're clearly into the second stage of hot cooked soap. The texture has changed, the soap has become more loose, it's expanded, and it's filled up with pockets of air. And the only thing we need to worry about is mixing anything that's separated back in again, just like we did the first time. So we'll give this just a moment, and any waters and oils that are starting to sort of fall apart, we want to bring that back together and then let it cook some more. Now it's been about an hour and a half since we started cooking this, and we're just starting to get into that third stage of hot process soap. You can see here it's separated again. Now it's separated significantly enough this time to where I'm just going to pull out the stick blender and blend that all in together. Now in this stage, sometimes your soap starts getting super thick and hard to work with, so it's not possible to get the stick blender in there. But in this recipe, we've added a little bit more water than we normally do, and we're not going to fully go into the third stage of soap making because we're going to let this cool down so we can get our other ingredients incorporated in, and we want to give this time to work with it as it's cooling. The longer we allow this to cook, the more water we lose in the recipe. And the more water we lose, the tougher and thicker it will become, and we'll have less time to work with it in that loose form. So we do have that light Vaseline stage look, but we're going to take it off the heat right now, and we're going to let this set aside to cool while we work on preparing our other additives. We'll start with the goat's milk and blend 3 full scoops down into 3 ounces of water. No need to pay attention to the directions on the back because we're not making this for a food product. We just need enough liquid in there to get the goat's milk into a cream form. And I need a bigger bowl. And we're going to color the goat's milk a nice bright orange by using paprika. Now we're going for a nice glowing orange in this recipe. And with paprika, you can get quite a variation of colors. You can get a nice light golden, you can get bright orange, and if you use too much, your soap will start going brown. And we're going to use just enough powder to turn the milk into a light tomato color. Now, unlike synthetic micas and pigments, herbs and natural ingredients very often have holistic properties that you can tell your customers. And in the case of paprika, it's packed full of vitamin C, and it also is known for being an antibacterial, which is exactly what you want in a soap. Now we need to go back over to the soap and keep a continuous eye on it from this point forward. We have taken it off the heat, but it's still piping hot, and with the cover on it, it has been cooking while we've been preparing our additives on the side. So we're going to start to help this cool down by standing over it and mixing it consistently. We are at a whopping 200 degrees, and right here is where our soap needs the most attention. We can't finish this recipe until we get down to 130 degrees. The Madagascar spice fragrance oil has a flash point of 130 degrees, which means if we don't add it in below that temperature, the fragrance oil will burn off and we'll lose our fragrance. And our paprika colorant is mixed with goat's milk. So if we add in at 200 degrees, we'll scorch the goat's milk, it'll turn yellow and brown, and it'll smell terrible. So we're working on cooling this down and watching the texture at the same time to make sure our soap isn't thickening up on us. And one way to help it cool down is to get the batter out of the crock pot and separate it out into 2 bowls. Now the clay part of our soap is not temperature dependent, so we can go ahead and add that into 1 bowl right now and mix that in well. This will stiffen the batter a little bit, but we'll work with it and keep watching it to make sure it's not getting too hard too quickly. Now you'll see that this also will serve as a colorant. Our batter will now turn a nice light gray-green, and this works beautifully when you're matching it with a dark musk fragrance or an East Asian fragrance. Anything that looks deserty goes well with these earthy tones. Now after about 15 minutes, we've reached our temperature requirement and the batter is right around the 125 degree mark. So I'm going to go ahead and pour in our goat's milk and paprika mixture. And you can immediately see what a beautiful golden color that this soap will turn into. Now it's safe for sure to add the fragrance. And we've got our NG Madagascar spice type. I'm going to put 3/4 of an ounce into the clay side, and I'm going to put a full ounce into my goat's milk side. And we'll go ahead and mix that up well. Now once we finish this, this is our last ingredient, and we're ready to transfer this into the mold and let it set up. That paprika colorant turned out to be a beautiful orange earth tone. And one thing to take note of when you're using paprika, this is a fine ground powder that you get at the grocery store that's usually made out of a tomato pepper. And the tomato pepper is in the hot pepper family, but the tomato pepper itself is not too hot. So paprika, although it's a tasty spice, it's usually not too hot if you buy a standard generic paprika. But you should test this because not all paprikas are made from tomato peppers. Some of them have a little blend of a jalapeno or a Caspian kind of a pepper put in there, And the last thing you want is to put an herb into your bath and body product that's going to burn someone's face, mouth, or eyes. So pay attention to what kind of paprika you're buying. If it's a generic standard, those 99-cent bright red powders, you should almost always be fine. But if you like to shop gourmet or you're buying something from a specialty store, just take a quick look at the ingredients to make sure you're not putting something too spicy into your product. Right about here, my soap batter started to thicken up in that way that I've been warning you throughout the video. So you can start to see that it's starting to get a little bit more difficult to work with, and I've been spooning it in layered chunks as we're putting it into the mold. And that's beautiful because with these clay bars and these earth tone soaps, they look beautiful when they're sort of layered into an eroded earth formation. So this bar will look beautiful, but if you can note the texture that we're looking at, this is what we wanted to hold off for as long as possible. And we were able to get that extra time in there at the end by adding a little bit more water to the concentration and also to stop the cooking process right when we hit that third stage. And here we are after 24 hours. Our bars have hardened up and they're ready to cut. Now, being that this is a hot process soap, the bars are also ready to use within 24 hours. And as you can see, we got this nice bright golden color mixed with the beautiful gray clay. And the smell is an incredible orange, clove, and spice. Now, if you'd like to try to make this at home, you can find the full recipe and step-by-step instructions ready to be printed out over at our website at thermalmermaid.com.